People don't whisper, "Just kill me," unless something inside them is already gone. That was the thought running through my head as I stood behind the counter, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes, counting tips in crumpled $1 bills while the neon beer sign flickered above me like it was about to give up too. Just like everything else in my life, the air smelled like cheap whiskey and rain-soaked coats, and my hands wouldn't stop trembling no matter how tightly I wrapped them around the glass I was drying. Because if I let go, if I stopped moving, I might remember. And remembering was worse than the pain, worse than the silence, worse than the mark hidden beneath the sleeve I refused to push up, the one that burned even when it wasn't touched, the one that meant I didn't belong to myself anymore. I kept my head down, kept my voice soft, kept pretending I was invisible, because invisible girls didn't get noticed and noticed girls didn't last long. But then the door opened and everything shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet change in the air. Pressure like before a storm, and I felt it before I saw him. The way conversations dipped, the way people moved without realizing they were making space. And when I finally looked up, I saw him. Jack Wick, standing like he owned the room without needing to prove it, tailored black coat, dark eyes scanning everything and missing nothing. The kind of presence that didn't ask for attention but took it anyway. And for a second I forgot how to breathe, not because he was handsome, though he was, but because he felt dangerous in a way that wasn't loud, wasn't chaotic, just controlled. Like every move had already been decided before it happened. I dropped my gaze immediately, because men like him didn't look at girls like me unless something had gone very wrong. But it was already too late. I felt it. That weight of attention settling on me like a spotlight I couldn't escape, and my fingers slipped, the glass hitting the counter with a sharp crack that echoed louder than it should have. My sleeve pulled back just enough, just 1 inch too far, and the air went cold. I froze, heart slamming against my ribs. As I tried to pull the fabric down, but his voice stopped me before I could move. Low, calm, unmistakable. "Don't," he said, not loud, not harsh, but final. And I hated how my body listened before my mind could catch up, slowly. Like I was underwater, I looked up at him, and his eyes weren't on my face. They were on my wrist, on the mark, the one I never showed, the one I pretended didn't exist, the one that meant I wasn't free. And something in his expression changed. Not shock, not confusion. Something colder, something that understood. And that was worse, because understanding meant he knew what it was, what I was. I swallowed hard, forcing the words out even though my voice shook. "It's nothing," I whispered, the lie automatic, practiced, survival built into every syllable. But he didn't look convinced. He didn't look anything at all, just still, like he was thinking 10 steps ahead of something I couldn't even see yet. "Who did that to you?" he asked, and the question hit harder than anything else because no one had ever asked that before. No one who mattered, no one who could change anything. And for a second, just a second, something inside me cracked, something dangerous, something hopeful, and I crushed it immediately, shaking my head, stepping back, pulling my sleeve down like it could erase everything. "Please," I said quietly, barely holding it together, "just don't." Because if he looked any closer, if he pushed any further, he wouldn't just see the mark, he'd see everything. And if he saw everything, there would be no going back. But Jack Wick didn't move, didn't blink, didn't let it go. And in that moment, I realized something that made my chest tighten with a different kind of fear. He wasn't asking for the truth. He was already planning what to do with it. The room felt smaller after that, like the walls had shifted an inch closer without anyone noticing. And I could not tell if it was real or just the way Jack Wick was still looking at me. Not impatient, not curious, just certain, like he had already seen enough to decide something I had no control over. I turned away first because I had to, because standing there under that kind of attention felt like standing too close to a fire you did not realize was already burning you. I grabbed another glass, then another, forcing my hands to move faster, steadier, pretending nothing had happened even though everything had. But the silence between us did not break. It stretched, thin and tight, until I felt like I might snap if I stayed any longer. So I stepped back, creating distance, keeping my voice low, careful. "You should not be here," I said, not looking at him, because if I did I might say something worse, something truer, something that would not be safe. He did not respond right away, and that was worse than if he had argued. Worse than if he had laughed it off, because when he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than before, almost thoughtful. "Neither should you," he said, and the words landed heavier than they should have, because he was right. I had not belonged here for a long time, not since the mark, not since everything changed. I swallowed hard, shaking my head like that could push the truth back into whatever dark place it came from. "I work here," I replied, too quickly, too defensively, and I hated how obvious it sounded, hated how weak it made me feel. His eyes lifted then, finally meeting mine, and for a second I forgot how to breathe again, because there was no judgment there, no pity, just recognition, like he understood something I had spent months trying to hide. And that was the most dangerous thing of all, because people who understood did not let things go. People who understood did something about it, and I could not afford that, not from him, not from anyone. The bell above the door chimed softly, and every muscle in my body went rigid before I even turned. I knew that sound, knew the weight behind it, the kind that pressed into your bones before you saw the faces. My pulse spiked, loud in my ears, drowning out everything else. I did not have to look to know who it was. I just knew, the way you know a storm is coming. Before the first drop hits, I stepped back again, instinct taking over, creating space, lowering my gaze, making myself smaller, invisible, the way I had learned to survive, but it never really worked, not with them, not when they were looking for you, not when you belonged to them. I heard footsteps behind me, slow, deliberate, and I felt that familiar cold settle into my chest, the kind that made it hard to breathe, hard to think. "There you are," a voice said, smooth but edged with something that made my stomach twist. I kept my eyes down, hands gripping the counter so tightly my knuckles turned white. "I was finishing my shift," I said softly, each word measured, careful, because saying the wrong thing always made it worse. Silence followed, thick and suffocating, and I could feel it, the attention shifting, the air changing again. But this time it was not just them, it was him too. Jack Wick had not moved, had not stepped back, had not looked away. And for the first time since this all started, something unexpected cut through the fear, something sharp and confusing and dangerous, because he was still there, still watching, still deciding. And I did not know what scared me more, what they would do if I stepped out of line, or what he would do if I did not. Time slowed in the worst way, stretching each second until I could feel it breaking apart. And I kept my eyes down because looking up meant acknowledging them, meant acknowledging what came next. And I had learned the hard way that hope only made it hurt more. "You left early last time." The voice behind me continued, calm but heavy with expectation, like a reminder wrapped in something polite. I swallowed, forcing my hands to stay still on the counter even though every instinct screamed at me to run. I did not feel well. I answered, quiet, careful, choosing each word like it might be the wrong one if I breathed too hard. Silence again. But this one felt sharper, like it was waiting for something, testing me, measuring how far I would bend before I broke. I heard a soft step closer, not rushed, not aggressive, just deliberate. And that made it worse, because control was always worse than chaos. Control meant they were not worried. Control meant they knew exactly how this would end. "You know the rules," he said, and the words settled over me like something final, something that had already been decided long. Before I ever stood here tonight, I nodded before I could stop myself, because not nodding was never an option. "Yes," I whispered, even though my throat felt tight, even though the word barely made it out. And then I felt it, the shift again, subtle but undeniable, like the entire room was holding its breath, and I knew it was because of him, because Jack Wick had not moved, had not stepped aside, had not pretended this was not happening. And that was new, that was dangerous, because people usually looked away, people usually chose not to see, but he was still watching, and something about that made the air feel different, heavier, like something was about to break. "Is there a problem?" Jack Wick's voice cut through the tension, smooth and even, like he was asking about the weather instead of stepping into something that did not belong to him. My heart stuttered at the sound, because no one ever asked that. No one ever stepped in, not for me, not for anyone like me. There was a pause, longer this time, and I could feel the attention shift away from me, toward him, measuring, assessing, deciding. "No problem," the man behind me replied after a moment, his tone polite but edged. Now, different than before, just business. Business, that was what they always called it. Like that word made everything normal, like it erased what it really meant. I kept my head down, wishing he would stop, wishing Jack Wick would just leave, because the longer he stayed, the worse this would get. I did not want him involved. I could not afford him involved. But he did not move. I could feel it, that steady presence still there, unshaken. She works here, Jack Wick said, and there was something in the way he said it, something quiet but firm, like he was placing a line without raising his voice, like he was stating a fact that could not be ignored. My chest tightened at the words, because it sounded simple, harmless even, but it was not. Nothing about this was simple. Nothing about this was safe. Another pause followed, thicker now, more dangerous, like something unseen was shifting beneath the surface. And she belongs to us, the man replied, just as calm, just as certain. And the words hit harder than anything else, because they were true, because that was what the mark meant, because no matter how much I pretended otherwise, no matter how hard I tried to disappear, I was not free. I never had been. I squeezed my eyes shut for a second, just a second, because hearing it out loud made something inside me crack again, something I had been holding together for too long. But when I opened them, everything had changed, not loudly, not violently, just a shift in the air, in the balance, in the way Jack Wick was standing now, still calm, still controlled, but different, like he had reached a decision I could not see yet. And when he spoke again, his voice was just as quiet, just as steady, but it carried something that made my breath catch in my chest. Not anymore, he said. And for the first time since all of this began, fear was not the only thing I felt. I did not breathe after he said it. I could not, because those two words did something to the air around us, something sharp and irreversible, like a line had been drawn that no one else could see, but everyone could feel. Not anymore, Jack Wick had said, and the silence that followed was not empty. It was loaded, heavy with something that made my pulse spike and my thoughts scatter, because people did not say things like that unless they were ready to stand behind them, and standing behind something like that came with a cost I knew too well. I shook my head instinctively, a small movement but urgent, trying to stop it before it went any further. Please, I whispered, barely audible, not even sure who I was saying it to anymore, him or them, or maybe just the moment itself, because once something like this started, it did not stop, it only escalated, and I could not survive that again. I could not drag anyone else into it, especially not someone who clearly did not understand what he was stepping into. But Jack Wick did not look at me, not this time. His attention stayed forward, steady, unbroken, like I was not the one he was focused on anymore, like the decision had already been made and there was no space left for doubt. You are interfering in something that does not concern you, the man behind me said, and his voice had changed now, still controlled, still calm, but tighter, like a thread pulled just enough to threaten snapping. I felt it in my chest, that familiar pressure, the warning that things were about to shift in a way that could not be undone. It concerns me now, Jack Wick replied, just as calm, just as controlled, and that was worse, because there was no hesitation in it, no uncertainty, just a statement delivered like fact, like something already settled. My fingers curled against the edge of the counter, grounding myself because everything else felt like it was slipping. I wanted to tell him to stop, to walk away, to forget he ever saw me, because that would be safer, because that would keep him out of whatever this would become. But the words would not come out. They stayed trapped somewhere between my lungs and my throat, heavy and useless. You do not understand what that mark means. The man continued, slower now, deliberate, like he was explaining something to someone who should have already known better, and I flinched at the word mark, even though no one had said it out loud until now, even though it was always there, always burning beneath my skin whether anyone spoke of it or not. I closed my eyes for half a second, just long enough to brace myself, because I knew what came after explanations like that. I knew how they ended. But when I opened them again, Jack Wick had finally shifted, just slightly, just enough to make it clear that he had heard every word and dismissed none of it. I understand exactly what it means, he said, and something in his voice made my chest tighten in a completely different way, because it was not confusion, it was not curiosity, it was certainty, the kind that did not come from guessing, the kind that came from knowing, and that scared me more than anything else so far. Because if he knew, if he truly understood what that mark represented, then he also knew what it would take to go against it. And he was still standing here, still choosing this. The silence stretched again, longer this time, heavier, and I could feel it. That shift in balance that happens right before something breaks. Not loud, not obvious, just a subtle tilt that changes everything. "This is your last warning," the man said finally, and even though his tone remained level, there was no mistaking the weight behind it, no mistaking what it implied. My heart slammed hard against my ribs, the sound loud in my ears as panic crept in, sharp and urgent, because I knew what warnings like that meant. I had lived through what came after them. I stepped forward without thinking, the words finally breaking free. "Stop," I said, louder than I intended, my voice shaking despite everything I tried to do to steady it. Both of them went still, just for a second, just long enough for the moment to hang between us, fragile and dangerous, and I forced myself to keep going even though every instinct told me to stay quiet. "This is not worth it," I added, looking at Jackwick now, really looking at him, trying to make him understand without saying everything out loud, trying to make him see that whatever he thought this was, whatever he thought he could change, he could not. Not here, not like this. But he did not step back, did not break eye contact, and when he spoke again, his voice was quieter than before, almost soft, but it carried something that made my breath catch and hold, something that sounded less like a decision and more like a promise. "You are wrong," he said, and in that moment, I realized with a sinking certainty that this was no longer about the mark, or the rules, or even the danger. It was about something else entirely, something I did not understand yet, and that made it even more terrifying. The silence did not break. It thickened, like the room itself was waiting to see who would move first, and I felt it crawling under my skin, tightening around my chest until every breath came slower, heavier, like I had to fight for it. I should have stepped back, should have stayed quiet, but something about the way Jackwick stood there, unmoved, unshaken, made it impossible to pretend this would just disappear. "You should leave," I said again, softer this time, but more urgent. My eyes locked on his, trying to make him understand without forcing the words out loud, because saying it plainly would make it real, would make it worse. But he did not move, not even a shift in his stance, and that was when I realized he was not hesitating. He was choosing to stay, choosing to stand in something that most people would walk away from without a second thought, and that choice carried weight I did not think he fully understood, or maybe he did, and that was what made it worse. "You are making a mistake," the man behind me said, his voice still controlled, but there was something else there now, something colder, something final, like patience had run out, and what came next would not be repeated. I felt it immediately, the shift from warning to consequence, and my pulse spiked, sharp and sudden. I knew that tone. I had heard it before, right before everything went wrong. "No," Jackwick replied, just as steady, just as calm, and I could not understand how his voice did not change, how it did not carry even a hint of doubt, because there should have been doubt, there should have been hesitation, but there was none, only certainty, and that certainty felt heavier than anything else in the room. "I am correcting one," he added, and the words hit harder than they should have, because no one had ever said something like that for me. No one had ever looked at what I was and decided it was something that needed to be fixed instead of something that needed to be accepted. I shook my head again, faster this time, panic rising, because this was not something that could be corrected, not like this, not by him, not by anyone. "You do not know what you are saying," I said quickly, my voice breaking despite everything I tried to do to hold it together. Because if he kept going, if he pushed this any further, there would be no going back, for him or for me. And I could not let that happen. I could not be the reason someone else got pulled into this. But Jackwick finally looked at me then, really looked, and for a second, everything else faded. The room, the tension, the fear, all of it dimmed under the weight of that gaze, because there was something there I did not expect, not pity, not curiosity, something steadier, something that felt like resolve, like he had already decided and nothing I said would change it. "I know enough," he said quietly, and the way he said it made my chest tighten, because it sounded like he was not guessing, like he was not stepping into the dark blindly. He knew exactly how dangerous this was, and he was still choosing it. The air shifted again, sharper now, and I could feel it. That breaking point getting closer, the moment where words stopped. Maturing and everything else took over. I stepped forward without thinking, placing myself between them, not because I thought it would stop anything, but because I needed to try, needed to do something. Please, I said again, louder this time, my voice shaking as I looked at Jack Wick. This is not your fight. And for a second, just a second, I thought he might listen, because his eyes softened, just barely, just enough to make hope flicker where it should not have. But then it was gone, replaced by that same unshakable calm. It became my fight the moment I saw that mark, he said, and the words settled over me like something inevitable, something that had already been decided whether I wanted it or not. My breath caught, my heart racing for a completely different reason now, because this was not just defiance. This was something else, something deeper, something I could not name but could feel building in the space between us and behind me. The silence shifted again, colder, heavier, like whatever came next had already started, and I realized with a sinking certainty that no matter what I said now, no matter how hard I tried to stop it, this was no longer something I could control, because Jack Wick had already made his choice, and somehow, terrifyingly, I was part of it. The moment stretched too far, like something pulled tight enough to snap, and I felt it in my chest before anything else happened. That quiet shift that meant the decision was no longer mine to influence, no longer his to reconsider. It had already tipped into something else, something irreversible. Then you leave me no choice, the man behind me said, and even though his voice stayed calm, something underneath it hardened, settled into place like a door closing somewhere I could not see. My breath caught, sharp and immediate, because I knew what came after words like that. I had lived it, survived it, barely, and I turned toward Jack Wick again, faster this time. Urgency breaking through every layer of fear I had built to protect myself. You need to go, I said, louder than before, my voice unsteady but desperate now, because this was the last moment, the last chance to stop it before it went too far, before it became something that could not be undone. But he did not move, not even a fraction, and that stillness was louder than anything else in the room, louder than my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, louder than the tension pressing down on all of us, because it was not hesitation, it was control, complete and unwavering. No, he said simply, and the word landed like something final, something that closed every exit I had been hoping for. My hands trembled at my sides, fingers curling into fists I could not unclench, because I could feel it now, the room shifting, people noticing without wanting to notice, conversations fading into quiet as something unseen drew their attention whether they meant to look or not. This was how it started, not loud, not chaotic, just a slow pull of focus that gathered everything into one place until there was nowhere left to hide. You are choosing this, the man said, and this time it was not a warning, it was acknowledgement, like he was marking the moment, committing it to something larger than all of us. Jack Wick did not answer right away, and for a split second, hope flickered again, small and fragile and dangerous, but it disappeared the moment he took a single step forward, not aggressive, not rushed, just deliberate. And that was enough. That was everything. Because it told me he was not stepping back, he was stepping in, fully, completely. And there would be no undoing that choice. My chest tightened, breath shallow now as panic mixed with something else I did not want to name. Something that felt too close to relief, too close to the idea that someone was not looking away, that someone was not pretending this was normal. But relief in a situation like this was a lie. It always was. It only made the fall harder when reality caught up. Last chance, the man said, quieter now, but heavier, like the words themselves carried weight, like they were not meant for negotiation but for finality. And I knew there would not be another after this. I knew this was it. I stepped forward again, instinct overriding everything else, placing myself directly between them, my heart racing so fast it made my vision blur. At the edges, stop, I said, the word breaking out of me before I could hold it back. And this time it was not quiet. It was not careful. It was raw, desperate, everything I had been trying to contain spilling out all at once. Please, just stop, I added, my voice shaking as I looked at Jack Wick, trying one last time to reach him, to make him understand what this would cost, what it would turn into, because he still had a choice. He could still walk away, but he did not look at me like I expected. He did not look at me like I was asking him to leave. He looked at me like I was asking him to abandon something he had already claimed, and that realization hit harder than anything else so far, because it meant this was no longer just about the mark or the men behind me. It was about me, about what he had decided I was worth without even asking. "You are safe," he said quietly, and the words did something to me I could not explain, something that made my breath hitch despite everything screaming in my mind that it was not true, that it could not be true. But before I could respond, before I could argue or deny or pull away, the air shifted again, sharper this time, final, and I knew without turning, without seeing, that whatever came next had already begun, and there was no stopping it now. Everything went quiet in a way that did not feel natural, like the world had stepped back just far enough to let something unfold without interruption, and I felt it in my bones before I understood it. That shift from tension into action, not loud, not chaotic, just inevitable. I did not turn around because I could not, because I knew what I would see in their faces, that calm certainty that came right before everything changed. But I did not need to see them to know that something had already moved, something had already been decided beyond words. Jack Wick did not raise his voice, did not make a show of anything. He simply stepped forward again, one measured step that carried more weight than anything said so far. And that was when I realized the difference between them, between all of them. The men behind me carried control like it was borrowed, like it could be taken back if someone stronger walked in. But Jack Wick carried it like it was his by default, like he had never had to question it. And that difference changed everything. I felt a hand reach for my arm, not rough, not rushed, just a quiet attempt to pull me back into place, into the role I was supposed to stay in. And my body reacted before my mind could catch up. A sharp breath. A flinch I could not stop, but before that moment could stretch into something worse. It stopped, not because I pulled away, not because I resisted, but because something in the air shifted again, heavier this time. Final, like a boundary had been set that no one could cross without consequence. I looked up then, instinct overriding fear, and my eyes found Jack Wick again. And what I saw there made my breath catch. Not anger, not rage, something colder, something quieter. Something that did not need to be loud to be understood. His gaze moved from me to them, steady, unhurried, and the room seemed to tilt slightly around that movement, like everything else was adjusting to his presence whether it wanted to or not. "Let go," he said, and it was not a command shouted across the room. It was a statement delivered like gravity, like something that simply existed and could not be ignored. There was a pause, brief but loaded, and I felt the hand on my arm hesitate, just for a second, just long enough for me to notice, and that hesitation was everything, because they did not hesitate. Not usually, not with me, not with anyone they considered theirs. And for the first time since this started, something shifted inside my chest, something fragile and unfamiliar, something that felt dangerously close to hope. The hand released me, slowly, like the person behind me was reconsidering something, recalculating, and I stood there frozen, not moving, not breathing properly, because I did not understand what was happening, not fully, but I could feel it, that shift in balance tipping further, away from what had always been expected, towards something I had never seen before. "You are overstepping," the man said again, but this time there was something different in his voice, something tighter, less certain, like the ground beneath him was not as solid as it had been a moment ago. Jack Wick did not respond immediately, and the silence that followed felt heavier than any argument could have been, because it was not empty, it was deliberate, controlled, like he was allowing the weight of the moment to settle before moving again. And when he did speak, his voice was just as calm, just as even, but it carried something that made my pulse spike again. Not fear this time, something else, something that felt like standing on the edge of something I could not see the bottom of. "You mistook silence for permission," he said, and the words landed with a quiet finality that echoed louder than anything else in the room. I felt it ripple outward, that shift becoming undeniable now, because no one corrected him, no one interrupted, no one laughed it off. They just stood there, measuring, recalculating, deciding what came next, and I realized then, with a clarity that made my chest tighten, that this was no longer about taking me back. This was about something else entirely, something bigger, something that had already moved beyond me. And as I stood there, caught between what I had always known and what was unfolding in front of me. One thought settled in my mind, quiet but unshakable. Whatever came next, nothing would ever go back to the way it was before. The air did not explode, it settled, and somehow that was worse, because nothing about this felt chaotic or out of control. It felt precise, like every movement had already been calculated before any of us realized we were part of it. I stood there, unmoving, my arm still, tingling where the hand had been, but it was gone now, and the absence of it felt louder than the contact ever did, because it should not have been that easy. It should not have stopped just because someone told it to, but it did, and that meant something had shifted in a way I did not fully understand yet. I looked at Jack Wick again, really looked this time, trying to see what they were seeing, what had made them hesitate, what had made them step back without being forced, and for the first time I noticed the details I had missed before. The way he did not rush, did not react, did not fill the silence with unnecessary words. He simply existed in it, controlled it, like the quiet belonged to him as much as anything else in the room. "This is not finished," the man said finally, and even though his tone stayed even, there was no mistaking the shift underneath it. Something had changed, something that could not be undone. I felt it settle deep in my chest, that familiar dread mixed now with something else, something uncertain, because I did not know what unfinished meant anymore. I did not know what came next when the rules I had learned to survive by were no longer being followed the same way. Jack Wick did not respond immediately, and the silence stretched again, but this time it felt different, less fragile, more deliberate, like he was allowing the moment to land exactly where it needed to. And when he finally spoke, his voice was just as steady as before, but there was something else in it now, something quieter but heavier. "It is," he said, and the words did not sound like defiance. They sounded like closure, like something had already been decided beyond this room, beyond this conversation. My breath caught again, sharp and uneven, because I could feel it, the finality of it, the way the air shifted as if something unseen had settled into place, something that would ripple outward long after we all walked away. The man behind me did not argue, did not push further, and that was the most unsettling part of all, because they always pushed, always insisted, always reinforced what they believed was theirs. But this time, they stepped back, not quickly, not dramatically, just a subtle retreat that spoke louder than any confrontation could have. I heard the quiet movement, the shift of weight, the decision being made without words, and it sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with uncertainty. Because if they were stepping back now, it did not mean they were done. It meant something else was coming, something bigger, something that did not need to happen here, in front of witnesses, in a place where everything was supposed to look normal. "We will speak again," the man said, and the words lingered in the air like a promise I did not want to keep. My stomach tightened, the familiar weight of inevitability settling back in, because I knew what that meant. I knew how those conversations usually went, but before I could react, before I could even process what had just happened, they were gone, just like that, slipping back into the background like shadows that had never been there, and the room slowly exhaled around us, conversations picking up again in low, cautious tones, like people were pretending nothing had happened even though they had all felt it, all seen enough to know something had changed. I stood there, frozen, my thoughts racing but going nowhere, because none of this made sense. Not the way they had stopped, not the way he had stood his ground, not the way everything had shifted without breaking apart. I turned to him slowly, my voice barely holding together as I forced the question out, "Why?" It came out softer than I intended, more fragile, more exposed, and I hated that, hated how it sounded, how it made me feel, but I needed to know, needed to understand what had just happened, what he had just done, because nothing like this had ever happened before. Jack Wick looked at me then, his expression unreadable but steady, like everything else about him. And for a moment I thought he might not answer, that he might just walk away now that it was over. But he did not. He stayed, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet, almost too quiet, but it carried something that settled deep in my chest and refused to move. Because someone had to stop pretending that Mark defines. "You," he said, and the words hit harder than anything else so far. Because for the first time, it did not feel like he was talking about them. It felt like he was talking about me. and that realization scared me more than anything else in the room. For a long moment, I could not speak, could not move, could barely breathe, because his words settled somewhere deep inside me where nothing had reached in a long time. Not fear, not control, not even the mark itself. And that was what made it dangerous, because it was easier to survive when you knew exactly who you were supposed to be, easier when the lines were clear and unbreakable. But he had just blurred them without asking, without permission, and I did not know what to do with that. The room around us slowly returned to life, glasses clinking, voices rising again in cautious waves, like everyone was pretending the tension had never existed. But I could still feel it, lingering in the air like something unfinished, something waiting. I wrapped my arms around myself without realizing it, as if that could hold me together, as if that could keep everything from slipping further out of control. "You should not have done that," I said finally, my voice quieter now, steadier than I felt, because it was easier to fall back into what I knew, into the rules that had kept me alive this long. Even if they had cost me everything else, Jackwick did not look away, did not dismiss the words. He just watched me, calm as ever, like he was waiting for something I had not said yet. "They will not forget," I added, forcing myself to meet his gaze, because he needed to understand this part, needed to understand that nothing about this was over just because it ended here. His expression did not change, but something in his eyes sharpened slightly, like he had already considered that, already accepted it as part of whatever decision he had made. "Neither will I," he said, and the simplicity of it made my chest tighten again, because it did not sound like a threat. It sounded like a promise, and promises in a world like this were never simple, never light. I shook my head, stepping back slightly, needing space, needing distance from whatever this was becoming, because I could feel it pulling at something inside me that I had buried for a reason, something that wanted to believe him, and believing him would be the worst mistake I could make. "You do not understand," I said again, softer now, but more certain, because this was the truth I had learned the hard way. "It does not stop like this. It never stops." My voice dropped at the end, almost a whisper, because saying it out loud made it more real, made the future I was trying not to see come into focus whether I wanted it to or not. Jackwick stepped closer then, not enough to crowd me, not enough to make me retreat, just enough to close the distance I had tried to create, and that alone made my pulse quicken, because he moved like everything else he did, deliberate, controlled, like he knew exactly how close to get without pushing too far. "Then it ends differently," he said, and the words were quiet, but they carried something unshakable, something that made it clear he was not guessing, not hoping. He had already decided what differently meant. I stared at him, searching his face for hesitation, for doubt, for anything that would make this easier to dismiss. But there was none, only that same steady certainty that had not wavered once since the moment he saw the mark. And that was when the fear shifted, not gone, never gone, but changed, because it was no longer just about what they would do. It was about what he would do, what he had already set in motion without saying it out loud. "Why would you do this for me?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it, raw and unguarded in a way I hated, because I did not ask questions like that. I did not expect answers, not anymore. But something about him made it impossible not to. Jackwick did not answer right away, and for a second I thought he might not, that he would leave it there, unresolved. But then his gaze softened just enough to make my breath catch again. "Because you asked to disappear," he said quietly, and the words hit harder than anything else, because they reached back to that moment, that whisper I thought no one had heard. And I do not let people disappear when they still have a choice. My throat tightened, emotion rising too fast for me to contain, because no one had ever framed it like that. No one had ever suggested there was still a choice left for me. I looked away first this time, unable to hold that gaze any longer, because it felt too close, too real, and I did not know how to stand in that without falling apart. But even as I stepped back again, even as I tried to put distance between us, one thought refused. To leave, quiet but persistent. If he was right, if there was still a choice, then everything I had accepted, everything I had survived by, might not be as final as I believed. And that possibility was more terrifying than anything that had happened tonight.